Today, we're going to dive into one of the most powerful concepts from the Kṣitigarbha Sutra. It's a state of being called the uninterrupted hell. Now, I know that sounds intense, but stick with me, because this isn't just some ancient story about the afterlife. It might just be the most detailed map you've ever seen of a human mind when it's trapped in its own loops of suffering.
So let me ask you, what's the most terrifying place you can possibly imagine? A place of suffering that just never ends, where there's absolutely no way out. Well, Kṣitigarbha Sutra has a name for that place. It's called Avīci, or Mugan Jiok, the uninterrupted hell. And as you're about to see, that name is chillingly accurate. Just to give you a sense of scale, a kalpa is an eon. It's a length of time so vast it's almost impossible for our minds to grasp. And the text says for 10 million times 100 million of them, there's no hope. This isn't just a long time, it's a feeling of absolute, eternal hopelessness. And that terrifying idea is actually the setup for a really profound teaching.
So where does this all come from? Well, it actually comes out of a conversation, a very personal one, between the Buddha's own mother, Māyā, and the great Bodhisattva, Kṣitigarbha. She basically asks him about karma, about the consequences of our actions. And his answer? Well, his answer is what we're exploring right now.
According to the sutra, these are the actions that pave the road to this state. And as you look at this list, you start to see a theme, right? These aren't just random bad deeds. They are profound violations of trust. They're acts against our parents, our teachers, our community, the very foundations of a spiritual life. It's like they're designed to tear apart the very fabric of connection and harmony.
Okay, so this is where it gets really fascinating. This place gets its name from 5 specific characteristics, 5 things that are uninterrupted. And as we go through them, I want you to keep a question in the back of your mind. Is this really describing some physical place far away, or is it a perfect psychological blueprint of a mind in deep, deep trouble?
First up is uninterrupted time, or simugan. The classic idea is pretty straightforward. The suffering is relentless. It goes on, day and night for eons. There's no pause button, no commercial breaks, no moment to catch your breath. Time itself becomes part of the torture because it brings no relief.
Sound familiar at all? I mean, what is that, if not the constant, low-level hum of anxiety in our always-on, 24/7 world? The phone that never stops buzzing, the news feed that never ends, the feeling that you can never truly switch off. When our minds forget how to be still, we've basically built our own little version of uninterrupted time.
Number 2 is uninterrupted space, gongmugan. And this one is a real paradox. The text says the space is completely, totally filled by the suffering of just one person. But it's also completely filled by millions of people at the same time, and each one of them feels that same total suffocating confinement. How is that even possible?
Well, it's possible if the space isn't physical, if the space is your own mind. The modern parallel here is what you could call the prison of the ego. You know, when the mind gets so consumed with me, myself, and I that there is literally no room left for anyone or anything else. It's the ultimate solitary confinement, even if you're standing in the middle of a crowd.
And this is what that feels like. The world seems to spin around you. Every problem is, why is this happening to me? You can't really listen to anyone because you're just waiting for your turn to talk about your own stuff. Your own mind becomes this tiny, claustrophobic room, and it's filled to the brim with you.
Okay, number 3, uninterrupted suffering, or sammagan. The sutra describes all sorts of torments here, one after another. But here's the kicker, the really important part. It says this suffering follows you even if the entire universe collapses and gets rebuilt. Now that is a huge clue that the pain isn't coming from the outside, it's something we carry inside of us. And that's something we carry? You could call it a vicious cycle, or a negative feedback loop. The sutra might call it karmic momentum. It's those self-destructive habits and patterns of thought that just feed on themselves. They generate their own fuel, so they just keep going and going and going.
Take a look at this anger cycle. It's a perfect example. Something small annoys you, that irritation makes you lash out, which hurts a relationship. Now you feel lonely and isolated because of that damaged connection, and that loneliness makes you even more defensive and easily triggered, and boom, the cycle starts all over again. We literally become the engine of our own uninterrupted suffering.
Fourth is uninterrupted consequence, chwigwimagan. And this one is all about impartiality. It's simple. The law of cause and effect doesn't play favorites. It doesn't care if you're a king or a pauper, a human or an ant. Your actions have consequences. Period. There are no special passes, no loopholes.
A really helpful way to think about this is to see karma not as some cosmic judge, but more like moral physics. Seriously, it's like gravity. Gravity doesn't personally punish you for stepping off a cliff. It's just a fundamental law of how the universe works. In the same way, for every action, there's a reaction. It's impersonal, it's predictable, and it's totally inescapable.
And finally, we have number 5, which honestly might be the most chilling of all. Uninterrupted lifespan, or Myungmugan. The text says you experience 10,000 deaths and rebirths every single day. You desperately want it all to end. You crave the relief of just stopping, but that relief never comes. The experience has to keep going until the cause is exhausted.
What is that, if not a perfect, almost clinical description of unresolved trauma? It's the mind trapped in a moment from the past, forced to relive the pain, the fear, the guilt, over and over again. The outside world moves on, but inside you're frozen. The event is long over, but the experience of it just won't die.
Think about it. That guilt for something you did years ago that just plays on a loop, that deep resentment you have that poisons every new relationship, that weird way you keep finding yourself in the same painful situation again and again, that is the uninterrupted lifespan in action. It's a ghost from the past that's haunting your present.
So let's just put this all together. When you lay it out like this, the parallels are just undeniable. Uninterrupted time is our 24/7 anxiety. Uninterrupted space is the lonely prison of the ego. Uninterrupted suffering is our vicious cycle of bad habits. Uninterrupted consequences is just cause and effect, and uninterrupted lifespan is the endless loop of trauma. The ancient map of hell has become a disturbingly accurate map of the modern mind.
Right about now, you're probably thinking, okay, this is incredibly bleak. What is the point of describing all this suffering in such terrifying detail? Is the goal just to scare us into behaving? And the answer, which is the whole point of this teaching, is a profound and absolute no. The purpose of this fear is actually to awaken our compassion.
Let's be crystal clear about this. This teaching is not a threat. It's not some cosmic judge pointing a finger and saying, you are doomed to eternal damnation. That would completely miss the point. In fact, it would be the exact opposite of the intended message.
Here's the real message. It's a giant warning sign, screaming, this path leads to unimaginable pain. Please, please turn back. And for those of us who already find ourselves on that path, who are already in that place of suffering, it's an outstretched hand. It's Kṣitigarbha saying, I see you. I'm here. Take my hand.
And this all comes back to his great vow, maybe one of the most powerful promises ever made. Kṣitigarbha Bodhisattva vows to stay in these realms of suffering. He puts his own final enlightenment on hold until every single being, you, me, everyone, is free. So this terrifying description of hell isn't a threat. It's a diagnosis born from an infinite, unbreakable compassion.
And that leaves us with one final and maybe the most important question. If our minds have the power to create a state of uninterrupted suffering, then they must also have the power to cultivate its opposite. So what is it that flows without interruption in your mind? Is it the old, tired loops of suffering? Or can you make it an equally powerful, equally unending stream of compassion? Because ultimately, the world you live in is the one your mind chooses to create.